Hey, welcome to the Press Box Chronicles with Jeff Pearlman. Hey, welcome to the Press Box Chronicles with Jeff Pearlman, the show where a cranky middle-aged sports writer who has seen it all, that is me, takes you behind the scenes and into the stories. I'm your host, Jeff Pearlman. And as a guy who has devoted the last 3 years of his life to all things Tupac Shakur, I wanted to delve into a story that in a weird way, everyone in hip hop kind of knows, but in a weird way, no one knows. And it's the early rise of Tupac as a national hip hop artist and a singular moment of tragedy that informed, I would actually argue, everything he experienced going forward. And that's what we're going to dive into today. So I've devoted the past 3 years of my life to thinking only about Tupac Shakur. Occasionally I think about my kids. Occasionally I think about my wife. Occasionally I think about food. Occasionally I have the misfortune to think about the New York Jets and why they're going to win 4 games this year. But mostly I've been thinking about Tupac. That's what it is to write a biography. You dig and you dive and you live with the subject and you dream about the subject. You literally dream about the subject. And that's been me with Tupac as an outsider trying to write this book and understand who he was. And for me, there's this moment in his early life that is so incredibly telling of not just who he was, but who he would become. And we're going to go back to 1989. And Tupac Shakur is a kid. He's 17 going on 18, living in Marin City, in the projects of Marin City, which was known as the jungle. And at the time, it's a really, really awful period to be Tupac. His mother, Afeni, is hardcore addicted into crack. Tupac leaves her apartment and moves in with a friend named Demetrius Striplin. He's going to school when he wants. He's smoking a lot of weed. He has ideas of greatness, but he doesn't know how to get there. And ultimately, he's connected with a woman named Layla Steinberg. And Layla Steinberg is a local concert promoter, kind of mover and shaker in music. Tupac starts attending these weekly gatherings Layla Steinberg has at her house for creatives. And he's sharing his poetry, and he's sharing his verses, and he's sharing his love. And this woman, Layla Steinberg, is like, this kid has something special. This kid has something special. Now, she also says he's a pain in the ass. He's stubborn. He's pig-headed. He can be, early on in one of the meetings, Layla is white, and most of the kids are black and Latino. And early on, Tupac, first meeting, actually says, I have a question. And she's like, what, Tupac? And she's like, why are you the one leading this session? And she's like, what do you mean? She's like, you're the only white person here. Why are you leading us? And Layla Steinberg loved that about Tupac. She loved how freaking forceful he was and how he had his belief system and he wanted to express it, and he could express it beautifully through writing and through song. So it's 1989, and Layla has a connection with a guy named Atron Gregory, who is the manager of the on-the-rise hip-hop group Digital Underground. And Layla connects Tupac with Digital Underground. He has a meeting with the group and with Atron. They listen to his music, and they really like it. They like what he's doing. They like what he sounds like, but they just don't have room. Digital Underground is this group. You know them probably from the Humpty Dance, from Same Song, but they're this group that's like almost like a Grateful Dead hip hop equivalent, where it's a bunch of guys getting together as a collective. Shock G was the lead guy, Money B, Chop Master J, a bunch of guys, and they're touring, but they don't have room for Tupac. And Layla keeps saying to Atron Gregory, it would be great if Tupac could get involved with Digital Underground. And they're like, we just don't have the room. And Tupac, he knows he's a genius. He knows he's a musical genius. He knows he's a writing genius. And he keeps saying, I need something. I need a break. I need a break. And Digital Underground is like, we just don't have room. We just don't have room. We just don't have room. They do a demo. It doesn't really click, the whole thing. And Tupac Shakur, whose mom, Afeni Shakur, is a very, very famous Black Panther, who you should all Google, by the way, Afeni Shakur, Panther 21 Trout, gets an offer from a group out of Atlanta called the New African Panthers. And they're looking for a national chairman. And they know about Tupac being outspoken. They know about his mom. And they call him. And he's not even 18 yet. and they say, would you be interested in moving to Atlanta and leading our new African Panthers youth group as our national chairman? And Tupac says to Layla Steinberg, and he says to H.R. Gregory, nothing's happening here. Nobody gives a shit about me. I'm tired of waiting. I'm moving to Atlanta. I'm leaving music. And Layla's like, don't do this. Please don't do this. And Tupac's like, fuck this. I'm going. I'm tired of this shit. And he moves to Atlanta. And he spends the next X number of months frustrated out of his mind, trying to spearhead this movement, the New African Panthers movement, to an audience that isn't really listening. And he calls Layla often, and he's like, oh, this sucks. This sucks. And Layla's like, you shouldn't give up on music. And he's like, they don't want me. This sucks. You shouldn't give up on music. They don't want me. And she actually goes to H.R. Gregory, the manager of Digital Underground, and says, can you please find room for Tupac? This kid is so talented. He's so gifted. And H.R. Gregory goes to Shock G, the head of Digital Underground, and says, can you maybe take Tupac on tour with you? And Shock G's like, no, we're full. And he's like, please, can you find a way maybe to take this kid on tour with you? He has something. And one of the members of Digital Underground named Money B, his younger brother Cullen, had been Digital Underground's tour roadie. And Cullen liked it, but he didn't live and die with it. So one day Tupac gets a call from Shock G, the head of Digital Underground, and he's like, yo, Pac, would you be willing to be a roadie? And Tupac's like, well, what do I do as a roadie? And he's like, you'd be dragging a lot of our shit. You'd be schlepping a lot of our shit. You'll be carrying a lot of our shit. We're on tour. You're just going to be in charge of all our shit. And then he goes, and we can probably use you on stage every now and then. And Tupac's like, did you say stage? Did you say stage? He's like, yeah, we could probably use you on stage. And Tupac's like, fuck it. I'm leaving Atlanta. I'm joining Digital Underground. And what happened is just the greatest thing ever.
They killing kids right in the open. Been looking for love, the haters so pouring. Mine run around like something was stolen. Somehow I still found peace in the moment. Somehow your body, your essence is glowing. I need it all, you already know it. I play the game, just give me a token. I'm trying to dive in it till like the ocean.
Hey, this is Jeff Pearlman, and as many of you know, I have my 11th book, Only God Can Judge Me, The Many Lives of Tupac Shakur, coming out on October 21st. And the book is available for pre-order everywhere now. I have a special deal. If you pre-order the book and email me at tupacbook1@gmail.com, a screenshot with proof of your order, I will send you, from my very own collection, Tupac stickers, Tupac bookmark, and a signed book plate that you can put in the front. And if you want it made out to someone, to Jim, to Steve, to Bob, to Fred, to whoever, I will happily personalize it. The book comes out October 21st. If you pre-order, which I would usually appreciate, this is how I make a living, and send me proof of your pre-order to tupacbook1@gmail.com. I will hook you up with some really good Tupac stuff. So it is 1990, and Tupac Shakur leaves Atlanta to join Digital Underground on the Big Daddy Kane Chocolate City Tour. And this tour is Big Daddy Kane, one of my favorite rappers as a kid from I Get the Job Done, Queen Latifah, MC Lyte, Third Base, Popular's a Weasel, Digital Underground. And Tupac joins the tour officially on March 17th, 1990 at the BAMIs, the Bay Area Music Awards. And Tupac shows up super early and he's dressed well. And he's like, what do you need me to carry? What do you need me to carry? He's so freaking excited to be in music. Like his dream has been to be in music. And here he is at the BAMIs on this tour. Tour officially begins April 6, 1990 at the Cajun Dome in Lafayette, Louisiana. It's an arena that holds 13,000 people. 2,000 show up for this show because this is still a growth period for hip hop. Okay. Yeah. It's big acts. It's Big Daddy Kane. It's, Third Base, Queen Latifah, Digital Underground, but they're growing. And Tupac is like, he doesn't care that the seats are empty. He doesn't care that he's singing to that they're performing to a bunch of plastic seats. He's just fucking thrilled. And this is an amazing thing. The tour basically travels by bus. It's Digital Underground, all these artists. They go from Lafayette to Memphis to Louisville to Macon to Mobile to Roanoke. And they're on a Greyhound bus. And Tupac is making shit money. And I talked to Pete Nice from Third Base. And he's like, I used to buy that guy Pizza Hut and Whoppers. And Tupac is sleeping 3 hours per night. And he's smoking insane amounts of weed. And he's getting wasted. And he actually has 3 jobs on this tour, 3 jobs. Number 1, carry shit. So he is a guy lugging in the shit that Digital Underground has. Number 2 is a cool one. He's the hype man. So Digital Underground and Third Base go on back to back. and there's 15 minutes in between the acts. And Tupac is a guy who comes out on the stage and he's like, y'all ready for Digital Underground? Who wants to see blah, blah. And the best thing is he's wearing leopard print underwear, tighty whities, and he's holding with him a blow up sex doll. And the instructions are just entertain people. So he's got tighty whitey, leopard prints. He's got a sex doll, and Tupac is on stage for 15 minutes. And the crazy thing I always love is none of these people in Macon, in Lafayette, had any idea they were seeing the Tupac Shakur, generational artist, in leopard print underwear. He was just a kid in leopard print underwear. Number 3 job is Digital Underground at the time, they're promoting sex packets. And they handed out sex packets. And Tupac's job in between the shows was to sit in his room with a big container of stuff. And he would take a little baggie and he would put a condom, a shot of liquor, bubble gum, popcorn, a sticker, and a throat lounger that was supposed to give you an orgasm into a bag. And they would throw those out. So when Tupac was a hype man, he'd be throwing bags out. And Tupac was awesome. He was all energy. He would bust a lyric. He would sing a Don McLean song. He would talk about the Indigo Girls. He would talk about Public Enemy. He would talk about whatever. He was great. But he was also kind of insane. And there were multiple moments when the sound didn't go well at a show, shitty systems, it's early 90s. And he would scream at the sound man on stage in front of people. What the fuck are you doing? Yo, man, oh, fuck. And Money B from Digital Underground was always like, Tupac, you got to calm down. You got to calm down. And for Tupac, the best part about this, by far, hands down, no close second, was the amount of sex he was having. Tupac Shakur was having more sex than any human being you've probably ever met. And just a couple years earlier, he was this kid who was known for having, I interviewed tons of people who went to school with him, high school, middle school, duck feet, bad teeth. He had a haircut, like a bad fade with a peroxide strip in it, was wearing clothes from a thrift store back-to-back days. And all of a sudden, he's a part of this thing. And he's getting laid left and right. And he's on this tour where Big Daddy Kane is he's a hip-hop sex symbol. But you can only have sex with so many women who show up every night. So all the leftovers, I know it sounds crude, but it's true. Pac, blah, blah, blah. So Pac is getting laid. And Chopmaster Jay, a fellow member, told me, like, it was crazy. Like, every night, Tupac would be having sex with 2, 3, 4. He just had this, unending appetite for sex. And Digital Underground did something that is so insanely disturbing, but so wildly time period appropriate. The members of Digital Underground had a contest. Who would get laid the most on this tour? And you were required to save your condoms throughout the tour and put them in a jar. And at the end of the tour, they counted the condoms to see who had the most condoms in the jar. And you won. Tupac Shakur won. Tupac Shakur had the most sex of anyone on this tour. And then it got even better.
I'll make time for you for the commotion. Want you to ride me, la locomotive. I want your heart, and it's the motive. See for my love, this shit explosive. Before your love, I was eroded. Now hold my hand, tell me where we going.
So when Tupac was growing up, he had a lot of really influential musical artists that would actually surprise you. Loved Don McLean, loved Kate Bush and Peter Gabriel, loved the Indigo Girls. Music, he listened to everything you can imagine, from John Denver and Barbra Streisand to Earth, Wind and Fire and the Kool and the Gang. He was just a guy who absorbed a lot of music. But I would say in a lot of ways, the group that really informed his sensibilities, early on in particular, as a social conscious rapper, was Public Enemy and Chuck D. And in 1990, Public Enemy reached out to Digital Underground and said, we'd love you to join our tour, the Sizzlin' Summer Tour 1990. And it's interesting because Digital Underground was this hot act at the time. And at the same time, MC Hammer, who's huge with Can't Touch This, also offered them a spot in his tour and offered a lot more money. But Digital Underground, and Tupac in particular, loved Public Enemy. And songs like Black Steel in the Hour of Chaos and Fight the Power, 911 is a Joke, like those songs spoke to Tupac, a guy who had his own dealings with police in Oakland, who knew what it was from his mom, from his own upbringing, to be targeted. Public Enemy spoke to him. So when Public Enemy reaches out and says, we want you on our tour, it's a no-brainer. And it's an amazing lineup. It would be an amazing lineup today. It's Public Enemy, it's Heavy D and the Boys, it's Kid and Play, it's En Vogue, it's Digital Underground. And from the beginning, Tupac just loves this. Like, loves this. He loves standing on the sides and watching the way Chuck D works a crowd, watching the way Flavor Flav works a crowd. He loves the militancy of it all, the fuck you of it all. Like, it resonates with him as a young black man in a really profound way. This idea that you can stare into a crowd largely of white fans and say, fuck the man, fuck the police, fuck this bullshit, black pride, black self-empowerment. Like, that was Tupac's jam. And you can hear the echoes of that on his first album, Tupacalypse Now. And on this tour, Tupac makes two friends who have become very close with him. One is Tretch, who you know from Naughty by Nature, but at the time was working with Queen Latifah, also as kind of a roadie in a very similar role to Tupac's role with Digital Underground. And the other guy is Troy Dixon, whose nickname was Trouble T-Roy. And Troy Dixon was a part of Heavy D and the Boys' crew. And on the road, these were Tupac's guys. He would roll with Tretch, roll with Troy Dixon. They'd eat out together. They'd talk shit together. They'd seek out women together. Like, it was just this Three Musketeer type situation for three guys who were in the same age range, were living their dreams of hip hop national tour beauty. And it's July 14th, 1990. And the tour makes a stop in Indianapolis at Indianapolis's Market Square Arena, known for where the Pacers used to play. And it's the Indiana Black Expo's 20th anniversary tour. And the show starts at 7 o'clock at night. And tonight on the bill it's a trio called Silk Times Leather. It's Kid and Play. It's Digital Underground. It's Heavy D and the Boys. And finally, it's Public Enemy. And if you've ever been on a tour, if you've ever seen a tour documentary, if you've ever been at a baseball clubhouse, you realize like how boring life can be. You've now heard these songs a million times. So you're backstage. What do? On this tour, a lot of dominoes, a lot of cards, a lot of poker, and they would just mess around. And here they are backstage, and the show is going on. And there's a platform that's high up from the base. And a bunch of the guys are messing around. And Tupac is there, and Trouble T-Roy from Heavy D and the Boys is there. And Trouble T-Roy is a very interesting guy. He was raised very religiously, lost interest in the church, had a daughter back home, was a dynamic presence, really was one of the guys who put together Heavy D and the Boys. All those guys were from Mount Vernon, New York, as was Troy Dixon. And they're all messing around backstage. And someone rolls something toward Trouble T-Roy down this platform. And he jumps up and he sits on a railing to avoid this thing rolling at him. And when he's on the railing, it's like a wheelbarrow kind of thing, clips his legs and he falls backwards. And because it's dark, everyone thinks he's like 4 feet off the ground, maybe 5 feet off the ground, but he was 20 feet off the ground. And he falls backwards and everyone just hears like a poof. And these guys run over, including Tupac. And there he is, Troy Dixon, Trouble T-Roy, on the ground, his head open and blood spooling out. And they start screaming, "Someone get help, someone get help. Holy shit, holy shit." And you have to understand this about Tupac. This is important. Tupac went through a very, very traumatic life, a very, very traumatic life of addiction, of poverty, of eviction, on and on and on. But he hadn't seen a ton of death and a ton of this. And there's his friend bleeding out of his head. And they take him to the hospital, and everyone on tour follows to the hospital. And they're all in the waiting room. All the artists are in the waiting room. The guys from Public Enemy, the guys from Heavy D and the Boys, Kid and Play, they're all in the waiting room. And Tupac is pacing back and forth. Oh my God, what the fuck, what the fuck, what the fuck? And the doctors eventually come out and they say, Troy Dixon is brain dead. And they call his parents in Mount Vernon and they say, if you want to say goodbye to your son, before he passes, now is the time. And they fly out to Indiana. And in that whole, like, the show must go on thing, the next day, the tour members, without Heavy D and the boys, are doing a show in New York. And they actually get a call that Troy has died. And they're all backstage. And I was talking to Kid, Christopher Reed from Kid and Play, and he told me he was with Tupac. And Tupac gets the news and he just crumples and he's bawling and he's bawling and he's bawling and he's devastated. And a couple of days later, they all went to Mount Vernon to attend the funeral. And Kid told me he was sitting next to Tupac. And Tupac is just, again, bawling during the ceremony. He can't, the church is packed and he can't take it. It's a Jehovah's Witness church and he's screaming and crying and he leaves. And Kid, who was a little older than Tupac, followed him out. And he went to a nearby window and he smashed it. Tupac did. And Kid's like, yo, Pac, you need to calm down. You need to calm down. And Tupac's like, fuck that. Fuck that. And he's just so wounded and so devastated. And Kid said to me later on, Kid, by the way, a wonderful, wonderful guy, said to me, I really think that's probably the first moment where Tupac understood sort of the gravity of loss. And there's a song by Pete Rock and CL Smooth, They Reminisce Over You, that's dedicated in honor of Troy Dixon. And whenever I hear that song now, I don't just think of Trouble T-Roy and the tragedy of a life snuffed out at a very young age. I think of Tupac Shakur learning for the first time in very visceral, horrible terms about the sort of finite nature of life in front of him. That is a wrap for this episode of Press Box Chronicles with Jeff Pearlman. Please leave a comment below on what stories you'd like to hear more about, or if there's a particular sports figure you're interested in. As a reminder, my new book, Only God Can Judge Me, The Many Lives of Tupac Shakur, is available wherever you buy books. Please make sure you like and subscribe and follow me on TikTok at Jeff Pearlman Author and Bluesky at Jeff Pearlman. Thank you for diving behind the scenes and digging into the story. We'll see you next time on Press Box Chronicles.
They killing kids right in the open.